Men, women, cheating. Is there a correlation with the number of partners someone has and how much more likely they are to commit adultery or cheat on their boyfriend or girlfriend? Hey, but before we get into this video, my name is Ruslan, and this channel exists to encourage, empower, and inspire you to live a life that blesses God. If you're not new here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. What are you doing? Now let's get into this video.
Study where they looked at the average number of sexual partners for women that cheated in a relationship and the average number of sexual partners for women that did not cheat. So before marriage, I would have a group of 10 girls there and I would say, do you think that body count matters as far as cheating in a relationship? And
okay, so real quick, before we reveal the survey, do you think body count matters when it comes to cheating in a relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Why do you think that?
Because if you condition yourself to be able to do a lot of hookups and you have these casual sexual hookups, then I think it's more likely, it's easier for you to do because you're not bonding deeply with just one person at a time. You're used to just have the sex as just a casual thing that you just do, break the bond, break the bond, and then the bond becomes less significant. So it makes sense to me why someone who's had a lot of sexual partners before marriage would end up having a harder time staying faithful.
Interesting. Do you think that society believes that?
No.
Why do you think society don't believe that?
I think they believe that sex is just, I mean, the way it sounds like to me is people believe that sex is just something that feels good, something that's natural that you just do. But they really do understate just the neurological things that are going on inside of your brain that are actually creating these, releasing these hormones like vasopressin and oxytocin, you know, which actually are bonding chemicals. So
the funny part is that what you're getting at is that people who are are coming from a materialist, naturalist, secular humanist point of view, right? It's just, they don't believe there's anything spiritual. They believe it's just natural. We're going to play more of the clip in a second. They don't believe in what what happens in the natural.
Yeah. That is an interesting
Think about that, right?
Yeah,
so you're talking about specific chemicals being released that are we would say are intended to help you bond, pair bond with your significant other. Yeah. Because that's a good thing. Yeah. When in the context of a one man and one woman marriage.
That's right.
But the secular humanist would deny those claims. Yeah. Even though that's what the science actually states.
Yeah. And because that's what's interesting about it too, is because that's exactly what happens. You actually do bond, which is why it's a lot harder. That's why I think sex, this is one reason too why I think you could be a non-Christian and still be against sex before marriage, because it does create, the bonding creates trust. Yes. And so you might be trusting people who you don't know well enough yet. And then that can lead to all kinds of bad situations. Yeah.
And the reason why I queued this up for you is if you guys go watch our podcast where I had John on, and you guys all should, you come from the pickup artist world, right? Like you come from this world. So if there's anyone that has authority to speak on this, it would be someone who's came from it and then was redeemed and got saved. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So now dig this. This is a curveball. When I sat down with me and Lila had our discussion with Adam 22 and his wife Lena, they acknowledged not just what you're talking about, the material natural aspect of intimacy. They acknowledge that there's something spiritual that happens.
Yeah, which is
ironic considering that Adam 22 is a atheist.
Yeah, and I think people do know at some deeper level that it's not the same as just a purely physical act, you know, because if that was the case, then grape would just be assault. You know what I mean? But obviously something different happens, which is why it's considered a more serious crime.
Yeah. Of course, all the women are going to say no. Of course it doesn't matter. I can sleep with 50 guys before I'm married. I would never cheat on my husband. And I'm like, so if I did a survey with 7,000 women, what I should find is the women who cheated should have the same previous number of sexual partners as the women who don't cheat, right? Is that what I should find? Yeah. If it was 10% more, that would be
a little variance.
A little variance. If it was 50% more, that would be pretty significant. Yeah. It is 230% more.
That's wild.
250% more variance of folks who are promiscuous before marriage, that they're more likely to cheat.
Yeah, that makes sense. Marriage. Makes sense.
Women who cheat in relationships have had 230% more sexual partners than women who didn't. That is just...
It's a lot.
230% more. Yeah. So what is that, 2.3?
Yeah, 2.3.
So if you've had 10 partners and you cheat, the person who cheats has is that 23?
Yeah, it's be 2.3.
So over double.
Yeah, more than double 100% chance.
Yeah.
Statistically significant and incredibly offensive, Ryan. What do you mean? There's actual data that shows that you can't turn a hoe into a housewife? Actual data that shows that?
But like even without the data, it's just common sense.
For sure.
Shout out to Ryan Panetta, man. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's
Yeah.
an age-old saying that folks would say,
Yeah.
right? Now, here's the flip part in this, right? Is that God can redeem,
Oh yeah, 100%.
right? God
Yeah.
can redeem.
Yeah.
God can restore. I was just talking to a pastor yesterday who's writing a book about the consequences of being promiscuous before his wife was a corn star.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and now she's a mom and she's been away, but he's writing a book about the challenges that went into marriage because of her past life. Now,
Yeah.
we could talk about whether she was coerced. We could talk about whether there was trafficking that happened. We could talk about all those things. And all those things are real realities. SA is a real reality, right? All these things.
Yeah.
But the reality is people will have to deal with the ramifications of being hypersexualized.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. And I'm sure he probably singled out women here because it's more entertaining, because nobody thinks that it's more counterintuitive, that sort of thing too.
Right.
But obviously the same thing, I'm sure the data would show that the same thing is true about men as well. You know what I mean? So you have a much higher chance. And a lot of people just don't realize just how significant these consequences are. I mean, I was young, you know what I mean? And I mean, not that young. I mean, I was young when I started hooking up with girls and stuff, but that's what society kind of tells you you're supposed to be doing. You're a man, right? Like, what are you doing with your life if you're not hooking up with women? You know what I mean? And that's kind of how the thing is, but they never show the consequences of that. And these are long-term consequences that really stick with you. And me and my wife talk about all the time. Like, we wish that we were virgins when we got married. You know what I mean? But that's just, you know what I mean? Just one of those unfortunate consequences, because I think about just how different everything would be too, you know, but it is true that God still redeems. So that doesn't mean that the consequences of those actions don't stay with you.
That's right.
You know
That's
what I mean?
right. That's right. God can regenerate spiritually. He can do a work in the spiritual, but there's also work that we have to do in the emotional and in the physical sometimes.
100%.
What would you say some of that work you've had to do coming from the hookup culture and coming from the pickup artist world? What was some of, like, would you say, man, these are some of the practical things we have to work on?
Yeah, I guess it's almost like red pills, like the term for today. Same sort of thing. You know what I mean? Trying to hook up with a lot of women, make your value higher, that sort of thing.
Right.
What it does too is, like, you have to restructure your brain to start seeing a woman as a person that was made in the image of God, rather than just being a means to an end. You know, because you really do reduce. When I listen to the red pill people talk a lot of the time, they talk about women as if they don't want a woman, like they want a robot or a slave or something like that. You know what I mean? Because it's like, do you want somebody you actually like? Because that's not how they sound. Like, they're just like, the woman should be submissive and should do this and do that and cook, clean, and you know what I mean? And yeah, you can want all those things, but like, don't you want a partner that you can talk to, somebody that you can grow with and learn and love, you know? And they don't sound like that to me. Like, a lot of the times how they talk about women, it's almost like they've just dehumanized women in just the way that they speak about women.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things, is you learn that mindset when you see women as a commodity of some sort. It's like something that you're just trying to get something from, you know, you're trying to get sex from women instead of seeing them as a full person who's bigger than just sex. You know what I mean? And so, like, even learning how to think different about women in the small interactions is something I had to realize. I had to reshape my brain to start trying to see women more how God sees women, rather than how culture sees women a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you said dehumanize, right? Like you can dehumanize because your mind is warped. I would say corn does this to a certain degree, and all that needs to be worked through and submitted to the sanctification process of the Holy Spirit. And depending on where you are, you might need to go to therapy. You might need to do. I did we did this thing called men's skills course out of it. It's a curriculum developed by a Christian therapist out of North Coast Calvary here in Vista. I mean, they're in Encinitas. So I did this course, and it really helped. And then obviously, you know, I have a great Christian therapist. But all of these different things, I definitely. They will work, man. They will work, you know. And it wasn't like a confess my sins and now all the desires are gone, right? Like like they will work in there, and it's a continuing sanctification process.
Yeah, and you have to just work harder too, because even what we talked about earlier with the bonding and the pairing, you don't have that initially as much too after you've had such an extensive past, like how I had. You know what I mean? So, like, learning and trying to learn how to reshape how you understand sex and the means for it and what it is, you know, and it being an act of giving rather than an act of receiving, because it's an extension of everything you do in marriage and the gospel lens, you know, like in the gospel, just the same way Jesus gave up everything, you know what I mean, was willing to give up his life for his wife. We go into marriage with that same mindset. How can we serve our wives, you know what I mean? And so there's this mutual serving going on. And then you think about sex in that lens too, you know? And so like, just starting to kind of reshape how you think about everything it's a process.
We see according to the Bible that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when he answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.